Good evening, Louise.
Right there.
Well,
Dave, you taking the reins, or do you want me to take them?
I'll go ahead. I'll take the reins on this one. So, I think, as I said on my message earlier today, what we want to go through today is Tom very jealously was able to go to the game yesterday from a media perspective. So we want to get his thoughts on that. And then Tom's obviously going to stick around, but then me and Dan, we've got a guest coming on as well. We're going to talk about City's Youth Academy, EDS. I have some thoughts on it, transfer policies and things, a couple of comments that we've got from our fans recently, and kind of see if Dan and I can agree on our model, because we've been arguing about it for a long time now. So Tom, we're all very, very jealous of you. How did yesterday go? What were your thoughts?
Yeah, like I say, I think I said it yesterday on the little live I did before the game as well. I felt very honoured to be able to attend the game yesterday. Like you say, I was there covering it from a media perspective on behalf of one of the sites I write for, a site called Vavel. So I was obviously there writing on the game as a neutral journalist per se, but I had my City mask on, and it was quite obvious which side I was supporting. But no, it was like I say, it was a very strange one yesterday, in that stadium should have been full. We should have had a capacity crowd, and David Silva, being the Premier League legend that he is, should have had the send off that his career at Manchester City warranted. And like I say, when he came off with 10 minutes to go, and you saw him clap to all four sides of the Etihad with no one there, it was quite upsetting to see. He was clearly very emotional as he left the pitch. He came off to the bench to hugs off every player on the bench. Brian Kidd was there yesterday as well. I'm not sure if he was shown on the telly, but I don't think he's been around the squad too much recently because of his age and restrictions and stuff to do with Corona. So, and the squad all seemed very happy to see him there. He gave Silva a massive hug when he came off the pitch. So the game itself was a routine victory, as I think many of us expected yesterday. I think I'd said 5-0 in my pre-match prediction. I think it's the first time I got one right in a while. So, but yeah, the game itself was a good performance from City, exactly what you'd have hoped for against a team like Norwich. And it was kind of almost a bit of a passing of the guard from David Silva to De Bruyne, wasn't it, in a way, in that obviously De Bruyne has been our main player this season and for the last couple of seasons, but on David Silva's big day, we were hoping we'd see Silva on the score sheet. Obviously, Krul kept him out in the second half, which frustrated me. I thought you could have let that one go, Tim. You're getting beat anyway, but but no, I thought, again, De Bruyne yesterday was our best player on the pitch, as per usual. He was sensational. And like I say, I think David Silva leaving is upsetting for all City fans. I think no one ever really wanted to see the day come where he'd leave Manchester City, but I think the timing is just about right. I think he maybe could have stuck on for a season more or so, but with the likes of Foden and stuff coming through, I think it's a time that works well for everyone, for Silva to call time on his City career, albeit we wish it had been in better circumstances. We wish they got that send-off he deserved, but I think we're in safe hands with what we've got. In De Bruyne, in Foden, in Bernardo, we have got players to step up. But in terms of a player like David Silva, I doubt we'll see one like him again, in terms of everything about him, the way he conducts himself both on and off the field. He's just a perfect professional, isn't he? I think everything about David Silva, I think you'd struggle to find anyone who'd have a bad word to say about him. And that's full testament to him and his career. And like I say, felt very honoured to be at the game yesterday. Very honoured indeed. And yeah, hopefully, like Pep says, when the time's right, we'll have people back in to give him a proper send-off. But for the time being, he goes obviously with all our best wishes. And yeah, an emotional day, but a good result and a good send-off for David Silva, or as good as it could have been in the situation that we're in.
So 2 questions from me, Tom. Obviously I've always felt you get a bit of a different perspective on a game when you're actually there rather than on TV. Did look like Norwich did have a few chances. A couple of good saves by Edison, a couple of lapses in concentration I saw. So that would be my first comment or question. And then secondly, Cancelo, as we talked about last week, Cancelo at left back again, which suggests to me he's going to play against Real Madrid. How did Cancelo play in that left back role?
Yeah, well, your first question is bang on. I think Norwich did have chances to score. I mean, obviously, they thought they took the lead early on. I don't think any of us in the press area really had apprehended the concept that he was offside. I don't think anyone really knew what was going on. We were wondering why it wasn't kicking back off. And looked to the monitor, and it was like, oh, he is quite clearly offside. And those are the kind of situations where VAR is perfect, because like I say, I'm not sure from watching it on TV if you guys straight away would have thought he was offside. I mean, I didn't think there was anything wrong with the goal, but that is where VAR comes in and does the job properly, in that it's a clear offside decision and it's come in and it's ruled it out, and that's good. But no, they had chances. Obviously, that Timu Pukki chance came from, again, a mistake defensively, giving the ball away just completely unnecessarily. Like you say, I'm not sure if it was necessarily a lapse in concentration. It was a bit of good fortune for Norwich. But Pukki, I don't think he's scored since January or something like that. I had Radio Norfolk behind me, and he was saying something about his goal scoring stats, and give him that chance at the start of the season, like we did when we went to Carrow Road, and he puts it in the back of the net. So yeah, I don't think defensively we never looked in massive trouble yesterday. I think Onel Hernandez had a chance in the second half where he showed some good footwork and broke through, and Edison was quick off his line. I think Edison had a good game as well yesterday. But again, it's those defensive, can you call it a lapse in concentration maybe, for the likes of the Pukki chance, where if you give that chance to Karim Benzema, if you give that chance to any of the forwards in Real Madrid's team, and 9 times out of 10 they're in the back of the net. Edison did well. Edison got off his line very quickly, and obviously his positioning was perfect for that. He put pressure on Pukki and made him miss more so than it being particularly bad on Pukki's behalf. But we can't afford them lapses in concentration against the likes of Real Madrid. Your second point about Cancelo, I think I would put my house on Cancelo starting at left back against Real Madrid. I think the fact that Mendy was on the bench yesterday was all that we needed to see, and that Mendy he's not injured, he's not suspended or anything. He was just literally left on the bench because I think for the exact reason of Cancelo will be playing at left back against Real Madrid. And again, I thought he had a good game yesterday. I think he was better in the first half. He's always on the move, Cancelo. That's what I like, is that he's never static waiting to make that overlap run. He's always moving, and his movement off the ball actually created quite a lot of space, drawing defences across towards him, which created space for Walker coming down the right as well. So, and he put in a couple of good balls, and in the first half, particularly from an attacking perspective, he looked strong. He had a couple of positional errors in the second half. He got booked with that challenge on Cantwell, which was more of a cynical challenge to stop the counter attack. But I think as far as left back options go for that Real Madrid game, I think Cancelo has to start. I like Zinchenko, don't get me wrong. He's done well for City, but I said it on a show a couple of weeks ago. Zinchenko is very similar to Fabian Delph and his situation when he played at left back, in that he's only really playing there because we don't have a choice as to who else can play there. No, he's not playing there because he's a left back. He's not playing there because Guardiola wants him playing at left back. He's playing there because when he has played there, Mendy's been injured and we've not had another option. I think
he's distinctly bang average, isn't he?
Well, this is it. He's okay going forward. He's okay on the ball, but that's because he is by trade an attacking midfielder. So I wouldn't like to see him start against Real Madrid. I think that Vinicius Junior had quite a good game in the first leg against us. He had played on the left hand side in the first leg, and he caused some problems for Walker. And I think until he went off in that first leg, I think he was probably their main man, and they subbed him off for Bale, and it all kind of went downhill for them from there. But no, I think Cancelo starts against Real Madrid. I think Hazard will probably start on the right-hand side for them, or if Hazard starts on the left, it'll be Vinicius Junior on the right. So they're two very good wingers, and defensively, Cancelo is the best option that we've got to play there. There's questions about how we line up. Obviously, we have this. Real Madrid have to come to the Etihad and score twice. So do we set up a bit more defensive? I highly doubt it. I don't think Guardiola has that in his mentality ever. I think we've seen that enough in Europe when we've gone in with Leeds. And I also think maybe in the past, I've questioned him. The Monaco game a couple of years ago, I questioned why we didn't go a bit more defensive. But we had a more sturdy defence back then. I think if we go against Real Madrid and try to sit back, I think that's the worst thing we can do. In that I don't think we're... we're mentally, I don't think we're good enough defensively either to sit back and absorb that pressure. I think if we allow them the opportunity to take control of the game, I think we're in big trouble. So Cancelo's just the best option we've got in all capacities. He's the best going forward of what we've got, and he's also the best defensively. So I would be very, very surprised if he doesn't start against Real Madrid next week.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think if there's one team in the world in our 126-year history that should never try and play a defensive game, it's Manchester City Football Club. They just can't. It's never, ever been part of our DNA. Whichever manager has come in and, and managed the team, and I don't think it ever will be. I would be nervous if ever we brought in a manager who's more defensive minded and wanted to, a George Graham who wanted to get a 1-0 and then just absolutely sit on it. We don't have the players. It's not in our DNA to actually work like that. We've got to go out, in my opinion, and try and get an early goal. And if we get an early goal, I think we're golden. So we have to come out firing.
Just quick, Gavin, can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Your video's not popped up, pal.
All right. Fair enough.
All right. So gonna let Dan take the reins here because we want to talk about youth a little bit. Tom, please feel free to chime in as well. But Dan, do you want to introduce Gavin?
Yeah. First of all, I'll just jump on before we move away from Tom. Tom, what was it actually like hearing the players? Because obviously you were up close to it. Did you hear anything you thought tactically or anything like that?
It's a really strange situation to be in. I've covered a few games. I've covered the likes of I did Cardiff and Reading in the FA Cup earlier in the year where there was only probably about 1,000 fans in, and there was hardly any noise, so it was quite similar. But in terms of watching the Guardiola on the touchline, and I mean, I don't understand a word he says because I don't speak Spanish and I don't know what he's saying to half the players he's speaking to, but he's always at it. And the one which made me laugh a little bit was in the second half. We had Walker flew down the right wing and put one across to Sterling, who I think took a touch when he probably should have hit it first time and put it wide. And he let off the biggest scream in just like pure frustration as he ran all the way down over the touchline and into the little screen at the back. And it's just things like that. You can hear just everything that's going on. And it's quite eerie in a way. Because again, the bench aren't sat on the bench. They sat within the padded seats of the tunnel club. So literally they're about 2-3 meters away from the press area. And you just see them all having a laugh and a joke and a chat during the game. And it shouldn't come as much of a surprise to hear that Mendy's the ringleader in terms of trying to get the bench going. But yeah, it was a really strange situation. It's not one that I never thought I'd sit in a Premier League ground and watch Manchester City play with only 300 people in the ground, because it's just something that you could never foresee happening. But you can literally hear everything. You can hear Guardiola, who never ever stops, whether it be in Spanish speaking to Silva or in English speaking to Walker. He's always trying to get his message across. And I think in a way that's probably something which would help other sides in the fact that they can hear what's being said by the managers. I think at one point I'm not sure who it was. One of the lads on the bench, one of Guardiola's coaching staff, was telling Mahrez to go and warm up, and he was signalling a load of stuff rather than speaking to him. He was doing it all with hand gestures and stuff. And now I don't know if that's what they do. I don't know if he did it normally, or if it was him trying to avoid speaking out loud so the bench right next to him can't hear. I don't know, but we saw it with like the likes of Liverpool and Chelsea when Lampard and Klopp were having it to do, and you'd never have heard that conversation with a crowd in the stadium. So yeah, it is just a strange situation. You do hear everything, and it's interesting to watch. It's interesting to listen to, but there wasn't any sort of revelations that I found yesterday, other than just, like I say, that sheer frustration of Walker when he ran 70 metres just for Sterling to scuff his
yeah.
So.
I know, but like, it'd have been hilarious. He were like, "Fucking hell, Stilly, you melon."
Yeah, Sterling shouted something a little bit not obscene, but a little bit off the cuff at the ref at one point, and I mean, others laugh.
Tom, to be fair though, you're not the only one of us who sat in the press area. I've snuck in there a few times in my time. Been kicked out a fair few times. Right. So then, moving on. We're going to start a new show. Obviously, you know, but we're going to start a new show next season, just highlighting the EDS, the under-18s, and just giving an academy insight of players who scored and all that. Not massive, just quickly. So I brought on today Gavin. You right, Gavin?
There you go.
Gavin does MCFC Reserve and Academy on Twitter, so he does follow the youth team quite a lot. So I thought we may as well get him on, and I'm hoping he's got some good prospects for us to keep an eye on. So I'll let you take the reins, Gavin, with this, and you let us know who's the ones to watch.
Well, obviously, I mean, if we start talking about the ones that have trained with the first team, they're obviously much more in the press, and they're obviously got some real prospects in terms of where their careers can go, because with the likes of Doyle, Palmer, Braff, and Taylor Harwood, Bellis, and things, you know, they're really showing that they're able to sort of mix it with the first teamers, and whether or not there's a place for them yet in the first team, that's debatable. But I mean, certainly, I think Palmer probably has surprised Guardiola, because obviously he's made the bench a couple of times, hasn't he, since the lockdown? So it's looking good.
Am I right in thinking Palmer made he missed a penalty, didn't he, in the youth FA Cup final, the Liverpool last year?
Was he the one that missed it?
Yeah,
possibly.
I think it is. He's only 16, right? I think he's only 17 now, though.
No, he turned 18, didn't he? This year he's a second year, isn't he?
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been a big fan of Felix Nometca. Every time I see him play, I just think he looks absolutely phenomenal. I'm surprised he's not got another nod, seeing as he's already made his first team debut. But
yeah, but he was in some of the videos and stuff, wasn't he, initially? So, but obviously there was he never made the bench or whatever. I don't know why, you know, that he was perhaps overlooked, because yes, those telescopic legs of his, the way he can nick balls away and then do the tricks around people and then smash the ball in from all angles. He's got a lot going for him, but you know, so maybe Guardiola prefers more Palmer. I don't know. He's more close control.
He's one of them with preferences, isn't he, Guardiola?
Yeah.
You can't really change that. So, what about like such as Doyle? When you've watched him in the past, Gavin, did he just look? Are they the ones that look a cut above? Would you say? Because when I've watched them, I mean, Doyle looks solid in the first team, and I'm not going to lie, but he never seemed to pull any trees up for me when I've watched him for the academy.
Doyle is an all-action player, but I think he has problems because of that, because he goes chasing the ball just that bit too much, and he does get tired, and he loses a little bit of discipline in that midfield role, and it leaves gaps. And I think he was perhaps one of the reasons why teams were able to counter attack us quite easily in the EDS, because he got himself slightly out of position and then couldn't get back to help cover the likes of that Ike Pozo, who was trying to cover from all angles, and quite often did, but obviously as the EDS results show, he wasn't able to do it all the time. So I mean, as a sort of best player in the midfield in terms of his discipline and doing the right things, I've always said I always think Louise Farini is the better of the midfielders.
He's a local lad as well, isn't he?
Yeah. Big Blue as well. Obviously, his dad's a massive Blue as well, and he follows Louis all around. But obviously there is that X element that Tommy has, that when he does get the ball and he runs at players, he can cause problems. So it's a question of whether he can adapt his play just that little bit, so he's not chasing it all the time and then causing himself to be out of position and then tired towards the end of the game as well. But obviously, working with Guardiola, that surely should help. He'd learn that part of his game.
Now, this is going to sort of be going into what we're talking about after, Gavin. You missed it, but me and Dave always have a debate about academy products v signing a player. Now, I mean, Tom touched on it about left backs. I mean, we're playing Cancelo, most expensive right back in the world. We're playing him left back. We've got Mendy, 50 million, playing him. He's on bench. And then we're like on about playing Zinchenko, a left winger at left back. But when I've watched the academy, well, EDS, I can't remember his name, but the left back that usually plays for them, he looks a decent left back. So, do you think he is good enough to push on? I don't know. I don't know his fucking name.
There's Josh Brands. God, I can't remember how his full name is. Josh, on the thing, me Twitter on what. Josh Wilson, Brand, yeah.
Is it a surprise to you that he hasn't been pushed into the first team to help cover this left back position, or do you think he's just not good enough?
Yeah, I think he's quite away from being ready, but obviously he is just a first year. But like I say, 2 years ago, I think Jeremy Frimpong could have easily covered that spot, and obviously we've seen how well he's played for Celtic. I
can't believe we got rid of him. Like you said, I forgot about Frimpong. He's had a blinding season at Celtic, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's played at right back, but he could be 2-footed, so he could play at left back as well. He played games at left, so you talk about Zinchenko, but I'd say for someone who's an attacking midfielder, he should be able to cross. He can't cross to save his life, can he?
No, he's pretty bang average.
Yeah.
So right then, so I think we'll move on from there, and feel free to chip in, Gavin, with any points you have. So, I mean, what should we call this segment, Dave? The academy question, or the right to buy?
It's really the academy question, and the whole business model, Gavin. So Dan and I argue quite a bit over really what we should be doing as a club, and I'm very much of the opinion that we should be, when we're sourcing this incredible talent from all over the world, we never seem to see any of these talented players actually make it into the first team. They always seem to be, I'm talking about, a Patrick Roberts who, was 4 or 5 million from Fulham, never made a first team appearance. I don't think we'll ever see him in a City shirt. There's loads of examples of that over the last 3 or 4 years that that our model has been, let's source the greatest talent from across the world and let's bring them to City. And for some reason, they just never ever seem to make the grade, or they never get that opportunity in the first team. And I'm just very, very concerned that what seems to keep happening with Manchester City is that we're sourcing this great talent. They never make it to the first team. And then we have to go out and spend 50, 60, 70 million on a player. And I know we got, this CAS, we won that case. But I think we can all agree that we've got an even bigger target on our back now with UEFA and FIFA and FA, whoever else. But my concern is, as a Manchester City fan, 40 plus years, that is this going to happen again? That if we keep spending all this money and not bringing through the talent, which I think a lot of City fans want to see, are we going to be in the same situation again in 2 or 3 years where we've overspent money, rather than, to your point, with Frimpong, who was there as potential, we let him go to Celtic rather than, we spent 50 million on Mendy. Would it not be worthwhile as actually giving more opportunity to these kids coming through rather than continuing to spend all of this money. It's lovely to have all of this money, but it's got us in trouble twice now with UEFA, and I feel like it's going to happen again. I'm really interested in your thoughts, and it's something that Dan and I argue about all the time. That are we given the opportunity, do you think, to these young lads coming through, or are we a little bit too quick and going, right, we're sending them to Celtic, we're sending them to Girona, we're sending them to Melbourne City, or whatever else? What do you think?
Well, I think obviously that the hierarchy can clearly see there is this problem that from the 18s upwards, there is the EDS, the Premier League Reserve League, is absolute farce, and the fact that there's no chance of real development in that segment, that they have to find a solution, don't they? And they know that they can't push them into the first team for under 18 because they're not ready, and it would harm their development. So obviously, I think they've seen that and they've said, right, well, we need to expand the City Football Group, and that's why they're buying all these other smaller teams, isn't it? And I think so they can give these players an opportunity to play regular football, because until the Premier League Reserve League is a proper league where they're playing more than 30 games a season, where they're having to learn for their bodies to be physically able to play week in, week out. They're not going to be ready to make that step up to first team. Well, most of them. Obviously, there is the odd exception, like you say, with the likes of Garcia and Foden that we've got, and obviously it was Frimpong that went. But I think the vast majority of these players do need that next step to see. And obviously, the trouble is they've realised that loaning them to other clubs, there's no guarantee that they're going to get the game time. So you have to have some sort of control on how the development goes, and by having our own clubs, that is helping. And I think obviously it's not an immediate fix, but I think in 3 or 4 years' time we might see some real results from it, because obviously the likes of Joe Shields, who brings in the talent at the academy, he's sourcing some really, really good young lads. It's hard for him to see them not be able to go on further, but obviously he realises that there is that gap, and obviously once that's bridged, things can happen. But obviously they do need to bring in this better EDS coach, because, like I say, we've suffered at that level for so many years. I mean, obviously the Vieira experiment, you can't blame them, because he obviously was good at motivating the players, but I just don't think he was a great coach and could help them develop as players. You could see there was that upturn in performance because of who he was on the sidelines, but there was no pattern of playing, and players weren't learning to do what they need to do. And as I say, the prime example is Tommy Doyle, because you'd be able to watch him and say, look, Tommy, you're putting all your effort in, but you're not channeling it in the right direction. You're not making sure you're in the right place at the right time and things. So things like that. But which Parsley was clueless about. So, yeah.
So let me.
Gavin, you touched on what Dave and Admin Laney said as well, because they both said that about the youth manager being not the biggest name in the world and maybe not pushing the players where they need to go. And if you listen to any older pro, everyone tells you worst thing they did in English football is getting rid of the reserves leagues, because you'd be an 18-year-old going against such as a senior pro coming back from injury, and you're playing man's football. And I think that's sort of what you're hinting at, isn't it?
Yeah. It's not quite as cloggerish as it was, because obviously football's played at a faster pace and on better pitches, isn't it? But certainly it's that physical element of playing against certainly older players and players that are playing regularly, week in, week out. They have that they've learnt that man strength and learnt that how to deal with different things that you just can't learn at sort of academy levels. And the reserve league now, where they will play 1 or 2 games for over a 2-week period, and then have 3 or 4 weeks without a game. It's just stupid. It's just there's nothing for any of the development of the lads who deserve far much better. But the league is can't see that. So
yeah, so you mentioned there, Dan's exactly right. So we had Jim Whitley on the show last week, Gavin, and and he was saying that he used to get on the bus and for his training once a week, and he'd be met by Colin Bell. I mean, Colin Bell was his academy coach, and as you mentioned, you've got Patrick Vieira, that I want someone in there. I would love to get Zabaleta back in that kind of capacity that can show these kids and tell these kids this is what you need to actually get to that grade, get to that level. But my question is, and I missed speaking to Jim last week, and my question was going to be, and it's a bit open-ended really. Do you think, you mentioned Foden and Garcia a few minutes ago, so hypothetically, imagine if they'd have showed this potential and we'd have sent Garcia and Foden out on loan to a Celtic or, to the Dutch league or something. It's a bit of a difficult question to answer, but do you think they would be as good players now if we'd have send them out on loan? Or do you think they've done so well because they've been in and around that first team for so long, and they're used to at least training at that level, even if they're not playing that many games?
I think when you're that good, I think you need to stay within the team totally. I don't think going out on loan does anyone any favors at that level, because you need to teach them the DNA of your club, and that they've got the talent to be able to absorb what you're telling them and produce it out on the pitch. Whereas, someone who is talented but not that level might struggle to deal with that, and they need that time to develop away from the club. But those elite talents, they need to stay within the club, and as we've seen how well Garcia and again Foden is just developing year on year, it was the right thing.
Yeah, agreed.
I mean, with what you're saying about Tommy Doyle, like I say, not slagging him off, think he looks a good player, but if he went to a Championship side or even a League One side, and he was sharing a centre midfield with a 30-year-old experienced pro, and who digs him out and be like, Tommy, fucking hell, look at the space you're leaving. Maybe, like you say, that would make him a better player. But you send a Phil Foden, who's a David Silva-esque player, to Championship League One, and he's like, right, we've got to play long ball today. It's going to be everybody box trying to win an header. We've got to get 3 points. He's not going to develop. It's horses of courses, really, isn't it?
Totally, yeah.
Now,
what do you think, Tom?
Yeah, I've got another one for Tom first. Tom, being the press man you are, and Gavin, I want you to jump in with this as well. Do you think sometimes the club is its own worst enemy by promoting these youth players through a PR system where they're the next big thing all the time? 2 players I'm thinking of now, and they've both made first team appearances, Alex Garcia and Manuel Garcia. Coming through, everybody were, the PR team City was raving about them. Alex Garcia has just been released on free. I mean, we could have even sent him back to Belgium to that team we've just bought, but they chose to release him. And I think Manuel Garcia's in Spanish Championship. So what do you think of that, Tom?
I think, for me, there's obviously a lot made in the press of everybody else about our academy and about we should be doing this, we should be doing that, we should be doing this, because of how much money we put into the academy, how much the academy's worth and all of this. But that was always going to be the case when that academy was built. I think Man City fans like to see youngsters doing well. I think we want to see players coming through this academy. I think that in some capacity, so long as the academy is financially stable and we're bringing players through and we're making profit through the academy, we're doing what one of the main things it's there to do, as well as producing players. It's also there to produce players. Some players who come through that academy will know that they will more than likely not make an appearance at City. But if we bring a player in, train him up, sell him for 10 million quid, as much as that's not the obviously ideal aim of the academy, it's still, the academy's still doing what it's there to do in producing football and talent, albeit not necessarily playing for Man City.
Tom, just quick, just while you're on that, so do you think that's part of the reasoning behind this self-promotion is, oh, well, I've heard his next big thing,
yeah. Well, this
put
is
£1 million on it.
Get onto. I think if, for the fans to see these youngsters being promoted on Twitter raises the excitement about them. I think, like you say with the two Garcias, I think the Garcias played for City at a time where, I think, was it, if I'm right in thinking, was it the 2014-15 campaign, maybe, or the 20, a bit earlier?
It was Pellegrini.
It was a Pellegrini era. So it was a season where we didn't have an awful lot going for us. It was a bit of a dead rubber season in that we weren't doing particularly well in the league. Now we're doing well in the Champions League. So they made appearances in the League Cup where you'd expect these youngsters to get their first appearances. But as you've just pointed out there, if Man City are promoting these youngsters as the next big thing, even if they don't particularly believe it themselves, for clubs around Europe looking for signings, if they see Man City calling these Garcias the next big thing, and they think, oh, well, you know what, we're after a holding midfielder, he's not getting much game time at City, we'll stick in a £5-6 million bid, then happy days. If whether or not City believe it or not, one, for the mentality of the player, for them to be seen at the game is always going to help. For the fans to see these youngsters get promoted, in the fact that it looks like we're using this academy like we should be doing. But then also, like you say, in terms of the financial aspect of selling them on, if clubs hear that these players are going to be the next big thing, then that's going to raise their market value straight away. So I think it's all just clever strategy, isn't it? By the club's PR team know exactly what they're doing with all of these, the way they promote these players. It's all part of the bigger picture, whether or not it's for City.
And I've just taken, and Gavin might know this actually, so I've just taken a look at Manu Garcia. He actually signed for Sporting Gijon. You are right, they're in the Championship in the Spanish League for €4 million. So that would have come to City eventually. I guess, my really big point with this is that I'm not denying that this business model works. It's not even a complaint. My concern has always been, are we giving these lads at least an opportunity to flourish, or even train for a pre-season with the first team, and kind of give that nod? You know what? We should keep him. Let's not send him. To Gavin's point about when you see an elite player, do you want to send him out on loan, or do you want to keep him at City? All I'm saying is, when we bring these players in, like Jan Couto, who no one knows where he is, we were joking about that last week. Bought 7 million we've spent on him, maybe another 7 million. Like, I'm going to be mortified if we've spent that kind of money on him, and then this 17-year-old Brazilian lad that we're going to send off to Leeds or Celtic or something like that. All I'm saying is, when we're bringing in these hot prospects, can we not give them time to settle in at the Etihad for 1 or 2 years? Are they really going to get to that grade, or does it make sense for them to start the PR wheel and send them to Anderlecht, or send them wherever, and boost the value? Because you know what, they're not going to ever make the first team, but at the same time, we're spending 50-60 million. And I just want to make sure that from now on, we're always going to balance these books. That yes, we're making money on the business model with the academy, but then we keep hearing this summer we're going to spend 300 million. Well, where's that 300 million coming from? Because since March, we've not had any ticket sales. Yeah. So where's that money coming from to make sure that we're never going to get in this problem with CAS ever again? I just want these lads to have a fair crack of the whip. That's all, before we go, right, they're off on loan. Because you know yourselves, as soon as they go out on loan, how many of those players actually come back? Angelino, apart from that, I don't know anyone who's been sent away and then come back.
Yeah, the only one I'd argue, and it is a not really an argument, but I reckon if Douglas Louise could have got his work permit, he'd stayed with us. And I think you look at that and put. I mean, we're after another Brazilian lad. I think he's a centre midfielder. He's only 18. Apparently, we've agreed to sign him, and it says he'll sign for City in this in paper. He'll sign for City in January and be sent straight to Girona. So it's already agreed he's going there in January. Yeah. So why is he even signing for us? Why not Girona sign him and then loan him to us? Do you know what I mean? Why not do it that way? We own both clubs, so
yeah. What do you think, Gavin? Like, you know, is my thinking completely off, or just?
It is so difficult because the stakes are so high, aren't they? And the fact that obviously these players from Brazil, you've got the first initial problem of work permits, haven't you? To get them on the professional contract. So loaning them out is always the preferred option, because if they start doing well for that loan, they get recognised within their country's national team and start to be playing and whatever, and then it's easy to get a work permit. But didn't help with Douglas Louise, did it? But
no. And I like the fact that City will, you know, with these promising youngsters, you know, Douglas Louise being a central midfielder. I mean, we're blessed with them, but at least we've got that buyback clause, and I do appreciate City's, you know, business thinking around it. I just wish that some of these players that we bring in who are built up of, this is the best player in Chile, this is the best player in Brazil, this is the best player. Well, imagine how he feels. He lands in Manchester and he goes to the Etihad training complex, meets Guardiola and Kevin De Bruyne and whatever, and right, your plane leaves in an hour. You're flying up to Scotland, or you're flying to Belgium, you know, whatever. And it's got to be so deflating, surely, for a young lad to hear that. You know, they probably know already, but just think. But I would struggle right now, much as I love City, would I want to sign for them thinking, God, I'm probably just going to be sent out straight away, rather than actually gaining, you know, more experience with the David Silvas and De Bruyne's and Foden's and whatever else.
See, just touching on a couple of things we've gone over. I mean, this is going back a bit, but we said about City's PR. What about when we signed Claudio Gomez? Who was in charge of that PR scheme? Yep. What? He needs a fucking medal, because he is garbage. Gavin, you agree with me, Gavin?
Yeah. Well, I just say I don't understand why we signed him. You know, and there is always a couple of players that you think, you know, why did we sign him? Like I say, I mean, when we talked about the Garcias, Alex Garcia, I was like, no, but Manu, I thought had something about him, and he's picked now for the Spanish under-21, so you can't be doing that much wrong, can he? Really? So, yeah, there's. I think there is a lot of people around that sort of our scouting thing of sort of buying up all these 18-year-olds and stuff, and a lot of them, you know, why are you buying them really? Because they're just. You know, they're never ever going to get anywhere near the first team, and really, are you going to make any real money on them? Probably not, for all the hassle. You know, you have to think there is a small problem within this business model that they need to look at to say, look, you know, we shouldn't just try and buy up every little talent that you think might make it. I think you have to refine yourselves to look at what areas within the squads and so on you can think there's a chance that he can fulfill, because there's a player that he'll be moving out in a year or two's time and so on. Because like I say, our squad's full of central and attacking midfielders, isn't it? You know, but we're crying out for a centre forward and centre back and full backs, aren't we? You know, so it's
you make something quite good there, Gavin. You're right. You're like, why are we not buying Well, to be fair, we bought 3 right back. Well, we bought Jan Coyato, and we bought that is he Peruvian or Paraguayan
Yeah,
right
he's
back?
Peru, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have bought 2 right backs, but like you say, why not buy a couple of these 18-year-old left backs? Everybody knows left backs are a weak position. Why haven't we bought last season? But Mendy's injured all the time. We've only got Zinchenko. Why don't we just try and buy a couple of left backs? You never know. But like you say, instead we'll just get attacking midfielders and left wingers and right wingers.
Yeah.
But this is going on to them Brazilians. So Jan Coyato, or whatever he's called, he was. We brought him to the club to have a tour of the ground when he was 16, and we've only just signed him, and he's 18 now. So we must have been tracking him for a bit. So I don't think his career path is going to be as forgotten, like loaned out. I think there's a plan for him. I might be wrong, but I think there's a plan for him. Now, Douglas Louise, I thought he looked decent at Girona. I thought them few years at Girona really did him. When we sold him to Villa, I was gutted, but I thought, I'm looking forward to seeing him in the Premier League. And I wasn't disappointed. Now, Villa haven't gone down, and we have got the buyback clause. Now, would you activate that buyback clause now and have him back, or maybe even take him back and try and sell him for profit, which is a possibility? Or would you leave him at Villa knowing we can spend 20 million on him next season and sign him back if he does it again?
Well, I'd bring him back because I'm not a Gundogan fan. I'd get rid of Gundogan tomorrow. So
fucking hell, Gavin, don't start.
Come on.
Fucking hell.
You just become Dan Fielder's favourite person in the world, Gavin.
What do you think with that?
You look at his positioning when he came on, and when Norwich were attacking, he was getting in other people's way, and he wasn't doing anything to help tackle. But, I mean, going forward, he's an intelligent player in the midfield, but in that sort of more defensive role, he's no good at all.
Just to let you know, Gavin, I'm actually called Dan Gundogan. So you're never coming on show again.
Brilliant. That is brilliant.
Tom, what do you think? Would you sign Louise back?
Yeah, I think, because like you say, going back to your earlier point, I think if he'd have been able to get a work permit, I think he'd still be with the squad now. I think, especially what Gavin's just said there in terms of at that 6 role, I really don't like Gundogan as a 6. Fernandinho's getting on. He's got 1 more season left in him. Will we use him as a substitute holding midfielder, or will we use him as a centre half?
He's barely played, has he, Fernandinho, since March? He's barely played.
It depends on how our transfer window goes in terms of what our centre half lineup looks like. If we pick up a Koulibaly, get rid of Otamendi and Stones, I'd imagine we'd have a Laporte and Koulibaly. Maybe pick up an Ake as well, Laporte and Koulibaly, then with Ake and Garcia as backups. And then Fernandinho might see more minutes as a holding midfielder off the bench. But I think Douglas Louise, for me, I would have as our reserve holding midfielder over Rodri, over Gundogan any day of the week. So I think if the opportunity arises for us to pick, well, obviously we can get him back whenever we want in terms of that buyback clause. But if, and let's be honest, Grealish is likely to leave Villa in the summer, meaning that I think Villa will struggle massively again this season. I think they'll obviously struggle even more if Grealish goes. Is it worth keeping him at Villa in another relegation battle when we can bring him back to City and have him adapted to playing Guardiola's style? Yeah. Well, I think if we're going to sign him back, get him back literally tomorrow in terms of give him that full pre-season under Guardiola, because there's no point in deciding in August we'll bring him back and then he's got, let's say August, like that's ages away. It's only like 2 weeks away, but no point in bringing him back a week before the season starts and giving him a week to get used to playing back with the club. I'd say if we're going to get him back, pick him up tomorrow, get him back at the club, get him back training. And for me, I think he did a good job. I think he did a good job at Villa in a very bang average Premier League squad. Put him in a Man City squad, and I think he could really kick on to be a very good footballer. And I think Guardiola knows that, because Guardiola was disappointed to lose him to Villa in the first place, because he wanted him at City, if it wasn't for that work permit issue. So, for me, I'd have him back. Whether or not we see him back, I wouldn't. I'm not too sure, but I'd definitely have him back.
See, to me, he's a bit of an all-round player. He can play that holding role, but like you say, I don't think he'd look out of place a bit further up the pitch. And he'll add a bit more steel into the midfield. I'd have it back, personally.
That versatility is what Guardiola likes out of his players. So I think that's why Gundogan has been at City for as long as he has, in that he is, albeit, like I said, for me, I don't like him as a 6 particularly, but he can do that role, not to a massively high standard. But Douglas Luiz fits that bill as well in that, and like I say, as an 8, Gundogan might slightly edge Douglas Luiz, but as a 6, I think Douglas Luiz is better than Gundogan in every aspect of his game. So in terms of an all-round player that you want on your bench to come on in any given situation, if you had to pick right now between Luiz or Gundogan, I think Luiz offers us slightly more, and for me, that's why I would have him back rather than Gundogan next season.
So Dave, going on, sorry, mate, I'm going on that.
Yeah.
If we sign Luiz back now, or even next season, if we sign Luiz back, I mean, I might be wrong. It's either 20 or 25 million we have to sign him back for next season. So even if we sign him next season, it's not a massive drop in ocean. 25 million for a Premier League centre midfielder.
No.
Now, would that change your opinion on this whole buy to loan to sell to bring back, or do you think we need more than an Angelino, a Louise, or what?
Yeah, I kind of go back to what Gavin was saying, really, that, it's not going to happen, but we almost need to restructure this whole reserve league. And we talked, Gavin, a few months ago on one of our pod shows about, this Spanish model that, Real Madrid and Barcelona have their reserve teams play in the lower leagues of the Spanish leagues. I think they're in divisions 3 and 4, and they can't get promoted, but they get to play week in, week out in that particular league, and develop the players to come through. And it's well noted that when Guardiola was in charge of that, I think he brought Busquets, at least Busquets. I think 1 or 2 other players through as
Negredo.
well.
You had Negredo at Barcelona B.
Yeah. So what would you be open to? And it's not going to happen again because of the FA, but would that not make more sense, to your point of having, Manchester City, the Rags, Liverpool, Chelsea, having that B team that play in League 1 or League 2? So we're keeping them at the club, they're playing in the blue shirt, and we're spotting that talent that way, rather than them being kind of outside of the club, and we're looking at those scouting reports. Then would that work in England, do you think, if we changed our model a bit and did it that way?
The problem we have is we are Little England, and all these smaller clubs just have everything against the B teams. But the trouble is that all these little clubs are going to struggle to survive, aren't they? So it's in the whole football pyramid's best interest to make sure that as many clubs as possible are as viable as possible. And so surely there has got to be a little bit of a culling of certain clubs, because they just can't survive on those smaller tendencies that they have in the situation that they've got, without becoming slightly bigger and amalgamating areas to shrink the league down to allow some B teams to join in. It just it makes so much more sense.
I mean, go on, Dave.
I agree with you, Dan. I get it. I would love Louise back, and that's a good example of someone who we've brought in. We've recognised their talent. He's gone and actually played elsewhere, and we've done the clever thing of getting that buyback clause, which I think we have with Jadon Sancho as well, right? We have the same with him.
No. With Sancho,
but it's a matching, isn't it? If someone bids X amount, we're allowed to match it, correct?
Yeah, and they've got to offer him us first.
But there was a sell-on clause as well, so we're making money. So if it goes to around 100 million, we're making around 30 million of thingy, aren't we, for a player that hadn't signed a professional contract. So you've got to look at it. It was a great business deal. Obviously, he's a very good player. I'm not so sure he's as elite as everyone says he is, because although he's got fast feet, I don't think he knows what to do with them half the time. And I think you look at the German league, it is filled with a lot of young players, and the gaps in the defences are blaring. And it's the reason why Bayern, who buy the bigger, better players, win it every year, because the rest of the league is filled with a lot of younger players who just are still learning the trade. And
do you know what, Gavin? You've absolutely hit the nail on the head there. That is exact. Honestly, the Bundesliga is shit. You've heard it here first. Right. While we're on about Sancho, Gavin, there's two players that get hyped up. Our admin Laney is a Port Welshman, and he's adamant that Rabbi Motando was the next big thing. Now, what did you make of him? See, I made of him, he was just all legs and no, same as you just said about Sancho. Fast, but nothing to show for it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Fast and not a lot of end products and so on. You know, and no desire to try and get beyond the defender and then put the ball in the right areas. I mean, Braff's has problems in that respect, but at least he carries on running 2 goals. He might make a balls of the actual shot, but he gets there. I think some refinement in Braff, and I think you've got a real talent there. Whereas like the others, you know, I always said that Sancho just loved his YouTube videos of 5-second clips of his step overs and other things. He's obviously improved that, but you look at the England games where he's come up against better defenders and so on. He's not shone, has he? You know, he's looked good, but you wouldn't say, wow, he's the star on the pitch. And to say he's £100 million player is, I think it's stretching it, but if someone's willing to pay it, someone's willing to pay it.
I watched City v Chelsea in the FA Youth Cup final when I think Tammy Abraham scored 5 over 2 games.
Yeah.
And Brandon Barker scored 3. And I was like, I thought to myself then, Tammy Abraham looks the shit. And I also thought Brandon Barker did. But, like, where has it gone wrong for him? Like,
Brandon is a hard one because him and Angelino on that left side were tearing defences apart in the reserves and other things. But then he did get a few knocks and injuries, and I don't know whether that sort of changed him. But he never seemed to come back and be able to play as well. But he has had games where in Scotland where he's looked really, really good, but a few and far between. He just
see, I'd have put my house on him playing for City. Like, out of all the youth team I've watched, it would have been Brandon Barker, and you could tell Tammy Abraham was just like a cut above back then. But
yeah, I think if Abraham had been given the chances that Rashford had at the same age, because I always rated Abraham above Rashford. But obviously, Rashford's developed really well, and he's sort of proved me wrong to a certain. So I wouldn't say he's a world beater, but he's certainly a lot better than I thought he would get to. But yeah, Abraham, he tore us apart on many occasions when they played against us. So yeah, but it's difficult because that next stage up, without them playing that sort of better reserve league or first team football, the development can stagnate and players can just never pick up again. It's difficult. It is.
Agreed.
Yeah. Tom, have you got Tom or Dave, have you got the Facebook feed to see if we've got any questions on there? I mean, I can't.
We don't really have any questions, just really people are pretty much agreeing with what really we've been saying, to be perfectly honest. There's nothing really much. You know, Jane, our good friend Jane, has said it's also important to remember that young people do not all develop and mature at the same rate and age. They are all individuals, so what is right for Ron will not be right for all. I think it's important that the decision to bring someone on within the club or loan out to sell is not only the right decision for the club, but also for the youngsters involved.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I have to agree there, Jane. 100%.
Yeah. So I'm gonna wrap this up with just, you know, the question, and you know, the bit that we didn't really come round to was my other my massive concern with City is their transfer negotiations, and what I mean by that is when we are buying a player or when we are selling a player, not one of the youth. I totally agree. We seem to do quite well with that. But I'll go back to Tom's point. Tom was making a reference to Koulibaly and Nathan Aki a few minutes ago, right? That's going to cost us, I don't know if they're coming or not, but we're not going to get any change out of £100 million, right, for those two. I'm of the opinion that we should be selling John Stones and Otamendi before we bring in new centre backs. Now, here's the problem that I see with City, and we've done this time and time again. Why aren't we selling Stones and Otamendi first before we bring in other centre backs? Because I guarantee you, we should be getting. If Nathan Aki's worth 35 million, then John Stones has got to be worth at least the same price. And my concern is, let's say we bring in these players, and then we send a fax out, or however they do it now, to all the clubs around the world saying Stones and Otamendi are available for purchase. We're going to get peanuts for them.
Yeah.
I think for me, the two big things is one is that if we don't sign Koulibaly at the start of the transfer window, somebody else will. I don't think Koulibaly will be at Napoli next season. I think it's a known fact that we want him. And I know that there are other clubs, the likes of Chelsea and stuff, have been linked to him. I also think the thing is what other clubs know is that we are actively looking for centre-halves in this transfer window. So if you're an Everton or an Arsenal or these clubs linked with John Stones, for them in terms of their business strategy, they think, well, if we go and offer City money for Stones now before they sign a centre-half, they're going to want 30 million quid for him, 20 million quid for him. But if we wait until City go and sign Koulibaly and we know that City are therefore more desperate to get Stones off the book, then we're going to only have to offer 15 million quid for him. So as much as we can talk about City wanting to do it in this way in terms of maximising our profit, other clubs know at the same time that if they hang fire, I'd be very, very surprised if John Stones or Nicholas Otamendi were City players next season. Honestly, I don't think either of them will be there. But I think clubs also know that we want rid of them. And if you know that someone wants rid of a player, then you're going to offer less for them. And if you know that we've already got 4 centre-halves on the books, and therefore Stones is stuck there with not sniff getting into the first team on 150 grand a week, then if you offer 10 million quid for him, City are going to accept it because they don't want him there on the wage bill and he's not going to get game time. So I think in hindsight, getting rid of Stones and Otamendi first is easy enough. But I think clubs do know that we are actively looking for centre-halves, and it's easy for me to say we don't want them there. I don't know necessarily what the thinking is, but it would seem that John Stones and Otamendi's days are numbered. So it's easy to do it in hindsight, but I think the actual reality of it is a lot more difficult than it appears for City to actually get what we think the value of these players are.
It's just always appeared to me, and Dan's heard me say this a number of occasions, that Manchester City have never seemed to be in the sort of club that are really tough in their negotiations for the selling of players. I've got a few examples. I kind of wrote a few down. Edin Dzeko is a big one for me. We paid 27 million for him. If you look at what we eventually sold him for, because he went to Roma on loan first, and then they purchased him, it was around about £7 million that we got for him in loan fee and transfer fee. Now, this is a player who has played more games for Roma and scored more goals for Roma than he did for Manchester City. And I just think that they were just rubbing their hands when they said, we would sell him for peanuts. So that's an example there. Tevez, rumours, but about 47 million. We sold him for 10 million to Juventus. 10 million.
Yeah, the Tevez one's a tricky one, though.
It is tricky. I'm just giving examples. Like I had it out many, many years ago with Dennis Stewart about us selling when he was director at City for when we sold Nicholas Anelka to Bolton. We bought him for 12 million or 13 million, one or the other. Yeah. And we sold him for 7 million to Bolton. And I said to Dennis Stewart, like, this was in a supporters club meeting, like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like, we should at least be getting our money back. You know, yes, he wants to go. Why are we just accepting that? And I just feel that Tixie doesn't negotiate hard enough on player sales, and we almost, I don't want him there, but we almost need like a Daniel Levy who, you know, is a little bit more firm in his negotiations. I think we get walked over a little bit.
The only thing
Spurs are the only ones that are in that top bracket in the Premier League that do negotiate. You look at United and others that maybe Liverpool have done quite well, but certainly Arsenal and Chelsea have paid high money, haven't they? You know, so I think it's hard to find a good negotiator like Daniel Levy, really, isn't it?
I mean, it's hard to say. Now, just going back on Sancho, everybody goes, as if we sold Sancho for 7 million. But we don't even know if it's the end product. If we, like we said, if he goes for 100 million to United and we get 37 million for him and he flops, we're going to be laughing. But then, like, just going on to who we're on about selling then, John Stones and Nicholas Otamendi. Otamendi's 32. What are us for now happy to take for him? Otamendi. I mean, did we pay 30 million for him? He's been here 6-7 years. What would you be happy? I'd be happy with 10 million.
I'd be surprised if we got anything in excess of 10 million on the fact that, one, like you say, he's getting on. I also can't see him going anywhere of note, maybe to a mid-table La Liga side. And
Celta Vigo.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he's been somewhere like that. And I think one of the things as well is, regardless of the transfer fees, these players are also on a lot of money in terms of their wages. So it may look like that we're only getting 7-8 million quid for him, when in reality we're getting 7-8 million quid in a transfer fee, but we're also saving 120 grand a week in wages. So that
another 5 million.
That's it. So, and that's why I think I don't know John Stone's exact contract, but I'm fairly certain he's on a lot of money considering he's not playing a lot of games. So
I think he's 150, John Stone.
That's what I mean, 150 grand a week, something like that. And how many games has he played this season? Not a lot that I can remember anyway. So I think, for Otamendi, I'd be surprised if we get more than 10 million quid for him. But I think it's just one that is worth getting off the books with whatever money we can get for him, because he's not going to get a sniff next season with the names we've been linked with the likes of Garcia, Harwood Bellis coming through. Otamendi should be nowhere near the first team squad next season.
Now, Stones, if we sell him, I've got a funny feeling we might not. I think Guardiola likes him. I don't know if he likes him around the dressing room or what. Pep likes him. But I'm going to stick my neck on line, and you can write this in your paper, Tom. We're going to get 40 million quid for him. I'm telling you now, right? Leeds want him. Leeds have that Ben White, who's on loan at Leeds. He's not going to go back on loan. Brighton's on about keeping him. They're crying out for a Premier League experienced centre back, right? And who else can play Balassi ball other than John Stones in Premier League? Telling you, mate, John Stones will be a sought after product.
I just can't see us getting anywhere near that sort of money for him with his injury record. I really can't. And again, I keep going back to it, but the money he's on and the fact he won't be near the first team squad at City, I can't see him being near the squad at City come the end of the transfer window. And with that in mind, clubs will know that we want him off that 150 grand a week wage, and we know that he's had X amount of injuries in the last 2 seasons. Any club that buys John Stones, it's a big gamble in terms of if he stays fit. He's proved at Everton and he proved in his early days at City that when he's fit, he's one of England's best centre-halves and he's up there with the best centre-halves in the league, and no one can argue that. But it's a big gamble on his fitness, and that's why I just can't see any club wanting to spend more than 20-25 million quid on him. And I think if someone came and offered us 20-25 million quid, I would take that. I think that would be that would be a fair transfer fee for him, given his injury record. If he wasn't injured, he'd be starting at City. I think that's a known fact. If he didn't have the injury record that he did, I don't think we'd be having a conversation about signing Koulibaly or any of these players. Stones would be starting alongside Laporte. But I just can't see how we get that sort of money for him.
What do you think, Dave?
How do we, Tom? Then, I do agree with what you're saying. So, but how do you reconcile Nathan Ake, who's exactly the same age as John Stones? I don't think he's got anywhere near the amount of international caps that John Stones has. He's not won any titles John Stones has. They've probably played about the same number of Premier League games overall. How do you reconcile that John Stones is only worth 20 to 25, but Bournemouth are going to be insistent on getting 35 to 40, when basically you're getting I think, somewhat of the same player.
I know. I just do think it is all down to those injuries. So, I mean, I may be wrong, but I think you see it so often with players that have these bad injury records that when they come to do the medicals and you see all this information about them, it's like, in terms of quality, like, I agree with you completely in that I don't think when they fit, I'd say Stones is the better centre half than Ake, and I think he has higher potential than Ake to get to those elite levels. And Guardiola knew that when he spent 50 million quid on signing him. But I don't know how long you can justify keeping him and spending 150 grand a week on him when you just don't know if he's going to be fit. We've had enough bad luck with injuries this year, with Laporte being out for 6 months. I don't think we can afford, and it was shown this season, I don't think we can afford to gamble on another main player in the squad whose injury record is temperamental at best. I think he's one of them, but I don't know. I think I really like Ake, and I think Ake would be a good signing for us. I think he's young enough. He's good on the ball, and he's not going to start for us. He'll be reserved to Laporte because we're not going to play two left-footed centre halves in the same side. But his versatility and his ability to play left back if needed, and also hold in midfield if desperately needed, I think Ake is a good signing. And for me, if you said to me now, by the end of the transfer window, we'll sell Stones for 20 million quid to Arsenal, we'll sign Ake for 30 million quid, I'd take that. I think that would be, as much as I do rate Stones as a prospect higher than I rate Ake, I think for what we need as a club, I think that would be a fair deal.
Mm-hmm. So, we're realistically looking at 0 to 10 million for Nico, and anything from 10 to 20 million for Stones in your eyes.
I couldn't put a price on Stones in terms of I think, like you say, there's clubs who need centre halves, and I know that Stones is available. But like, as we pointed out, City aren't the best at negotiating when it comes to fit players. So when it's coming to a player that we know we probably want out of the club, who's got a bad injury record, I just can't see in my eyes how we get anything above 25 million quid for him. I do think he's worth more. And I do think, like I say, if he was fit, he wouldn't be for sale. So it's a weird one.
This is no dig.
Getting more than 25 million quid for him.
This is no dig at Stones, and I like Stones as well. But he's not mentally strong, either, is he? And that sounds a bit nasty, but he's not meant. He couldn't, like, he's not nobody's a company, but he's not took these injuries and then come back and been like, right, I'm coming back to fitness. That centre back spot's mine. He's just melted a bit, hasn't he, this season? And that's a sad thing to say, but I wouldn't be disappointed if we kept him in next season. I really wouldn't. And like you were saying then, Dave, if we do sign Ake and Koulibaly, he should be thinking, I'm same age as him. I'm an England international. I've worked for the Premier League. You're not taking my place. You know what I mean? That's what he should be thinking. But is he going to do that? I don't think so.
I don't, because my obviously concern is, and I go back to, if we bring in two more centre-backs, what happens to Harwood Bellis, for example, Gavin, who's, started making some appearances now, and then he goes, what the hell? Like, now I'm 7th or 8th in line to, you know, to try and get a game here. You know, it's the same. Sandler's coming back from Anderlecht unless he's, you know,
I think he's
already
already
another season.
I think he's agreed
Maybe.
to go back on loan there anyway.
Okay, so Addis Bayaro, I don't know if he's coming back from Blackburn. So we need to get this right. And I think if we have too many players in certain positions, when it comes to getting them out of the club, you're selling them on, that we're just going to get walked all over in transfer negotiations. And that's all my point is that, you know, Lloyd Samuel said here, we need to find the guy who sold Iwobi to Everton and hire him. And it's, you know, and that's all I'm saying, that I want us to be tougher in negotiations. That, Tom, to your point, like, right, for sale, John Stones, you know, I don't know, 180 Premier League appearances, you know, 10 goals, established, you know, £40 million or best offer. You know, I kind of want that rather than we just seem to go, all right then, right, yeah, we'll take Anelka for 7 million, but we know he's worth twice that. Yeah, we'll take 7 million for Dzeko. We know he's worth a lot more, but we can't be bothered negotiating.
But I think the thing is with Stones is that, to use an analogy, which is obviously very well, we love a good analogy on here. But if you got a car for sale and you're saying it's done this many miles, it's done this, that, and the other, you want 10 grand for it, but at the bottom you put, well, it's failed 5 MOTs because its wheels don't work. That is essentially the issue that we've got with John Stones, in that his CV reads perfectly until you get to the bottom and you read that he spent 6 months out within the last 2 seasons with different injuries. So it is those injuries that are holding him back. It's those injuries that are holding him back, both in terms of selling him as a player, but also in terms of him establishing himself as an elite centre half within world football. And that must be so frustrating for Stones. And like Dan said, it's the mental side of it, of him wanting to come back from those injuries and go, right, I'm fit now and I will be taking that starting spot back. And if Koulibaly does come, one, I can't see Stones breaking in above Koulibaly and Laporte anyway. But also, I don't think he has that mental edge to go, right, you know what, these are 2 elite footballers, but I put myself on that same level and I will be challenging for a spot. And I think Ake, coming from Bournemouth, from the Championship to Man City, would be happy to sit back and play 20 games a season, playing in the cup here and off the bench there. Whereas I think Stones has to make the move from City to better his career. Whereas I think coming from the Championship to City, even if he's only playing 20 times a season, it's a step up for him. Whereas for me, a step up for Stones is going from 15 appearances at City to 40 appearances at Everton. I think he won't win as much there, but in terms of his progression and in terms of his international potential as well, because we know how bad England's centre halves are. The fact that Harry Maguire is the best centre half that England has is worrying. There's an opportunity there going into the Euros next summer to put his name on that team sheet. And staying at City, I don't think he can make the amount of appearances or do what he needs to do to put himself in the mix with Gareth Southgate. I think if he stays at City, I think he'd be lucky.
I've been saying that for a long time.
But I think if he goes to Everton, to Arsenal, to Leeds, and plays 40 times next season, he could 100% be starting at next season's Euros. So it's all about what Stones wants. If Stones is happy to sit at City and try and come back from these injuries and try and force it at City, he will do. If Stones wants to move on, rebuild his career and enhance his international prospects, then I think for me that would be a better move for him. But I guess time will tell, won't it?
You're right.
It will.
So we've touched on it. I want to finish on it. Dave mentioned Bellis. Me personally, he's going on loan next year. He needs to be B4 and have a bit of men's football. Gavin, we'll let you have the final word on that. What do you think?
Yeah, because obviously Eric's been promoted to the first team, so there's one less space, isn't it? It's pointless. Taylor just sat there twiddling his thumbs, playing the odd game for the EDS. He needs to play a bit more man's football, doesn't he? And to do that, he's got to go out on loan. So where he can go, it's as I say, either going to be a top level League One club or a reasonable championship club, isn't it? I think. But if you're doing that, then you're running the risk again if the manager brings him in and then he finds another player that he brings in that he prefers and he's sat there on the sideline. Like say with Norwich, what happened with him? He's not played a game for Forest all season virtually, so it's it's just a pointless loan. So that's obviously why he's got to probably go abroad to one of our CFG clubs to virtually guarantee games. But I think he'd be better suited as a centre half. I think you learn more about the English game playing in England as a centre half. I think it's probably a bit different for midfielders and further up the pitch. So I think centre halves need to learn in the English league. So,
but if I were Harwood Bellis, personally, I would. If I knew that I was going to be going out on loan, I would be begging and pleading to go to Anderlecht and saying, well, just like we learned from the best Premier League central defender of all time for a year, please, who absolutely loves City and is probably going to be our manager one of these days. Let me go and get coached by him for a season, and then I'll come back. That's what I would do if I were Bellis.
You've heard it here first, Bellis. Cancel your Spanish lessons, lad, and learn a bit of Flemish. Right, are we wrapping it up then?
Yeah, this was really good talk. Thanks for all the comments. All seem to agree with us pretty much. But yeah, keep them coming.
Yeah. Gavin, would you be coming on again?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah, I've enjoyed it, yeah.
Yeah, well, like I say, we need your youth knowledge because I can guarantee I'll forget to fucking watch games. Right then, like Dave said, keep the comments coming, keep subscribing, tell your mates, and rate us 5 stars on whatever podcast platform you listen to. See you later, lads.
See you later, Blues. City till we die.